All right, so on to the digestive system. And, oh, that went way too fast. Okay, so some of the overall functions of the digestive system, well, actually, maybe we should take a quick little tour first, right? We've got, I think you probably can guess the parts. We've got your mouth, the actual esophagus, right? We have some salivary glands as well as the pharynx that will help you swallow. From the esophagus, food will go down to the stomach. After that, it'll go into the small intestine, where different digestive enzymes from the liver, gallbladder, as well as the pancreas will come in at the small intestine to help that break down food. After the small intestine, we have the large intestine, and then the rectum and anus. So that's a quick tour through your digestive system. And this is actually a very nice diagram. I would actually recommend that you may want to kind of reproduce this as you're studying, just to help you keep an easy visual of where things are happening, where things are being secreted. I think it's a little bit more helpful than kind of going through like a linear flashcard kind of model when studying for an exam. All right, that being said, let's talk about some of the overall functions. So ingestion, when we're talking about ingestion, we're simply talking about taking foods and liquids into the mouth. So basically, eating. So taking food and drink, taking food and drink into mouth. Okay? That's basically what that is. When we're talking about secretion, we're talking about all the different digestive enzymes that all the cells in the digestive tract are producing. So in total, and this is again, it's a textbook kind of number, but your body secretes something like 7 liters of water, acid, buffers, and enzymes into the lumen of your digestive tract every day. That's a lot when you really think about it, right? I mean, think how big a liter bottle is. Mixing and propulsion is just that. So mixing, you're churning the food and you're helping move it through the digestive tract. That's propulsion. Digestion, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. We have 2 different types of digestion. We have mechanical and chemical digestion. Okay. Then absorption. This is simply when the cells, the epithelial cells of the digestive tract are taking in the nourishment. So that's absorption. And then defecation. I think we all know what that is, right? So waste, things that you can't digest, like fiber or stuff like that. Bacteria and any kind of cells that are sloughed off, and any kind of materials, food that wasn't actually absorbed, are all going to be eliminated from your body as feces, right? I think we all are aware of that. All right, so I mentioned to you before, just a second ago, about mechanical versus chemical digestion. So what's the difference between the two? Well, mechanical digestion, that's the physical breakdown of food. So literally like your teeth chomping on a carrot is simply mechanically breaking it down. Or how your stomach and the intestines actually will squish the food as it moves it, actually causes it to tumble. That's actually mechanical digestion, just helping break it up. Now, so you're not altering any kind of bonds or anything like that. You're just breaking it up into smaller pieces. Now, chemical digestion, now we're actually causing reactions to take place. So hydrolysis reactions more specifically. And if you remember back to what a hydrolysis reaction is, basically hydrolysis is simply adding in a water molecule to break bonds. That's what hydrolysis is. Okay. So they'll break the larger macromolecules into the monomers. So for example, polysaccharides into monosaccharides, proteins into amino acids, fats into glycerol and fatty acids. Okay, so these are the macromolecules, these are the monomers. Okay, and we'll see when we'll talk about all this, we're going to have different enzymes in the saliva, in the stomach, pancreas, and intestines that will help with this. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the layers. You're going to see this in lab as well underneath the microscope. But let's see, so the layers, There we go. The layers are the mucosa, right? And that's going to consist of an epithelial layer, the lamina propria, and the muscularis mucosae. The submucosa, the muscularis layer, and it has two different sublayers to it. There's a circular muscle, and that circular muscle is going to circle around the lumen. And then the longitudinal muscle, which goes down the length of the intestine or stomach or wherever we are. And then finally the serosa. And you can see here, serosa consists of the areolar connective tissue as well as simple squamous epithelium. Okay. Now the mucosa, usually the epithelium is going to be non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. In some areas, what you're going to end up seeing is simple columnar epithelium. So where we see the stratified squamous epithelium, again, this is non-keratinized, right? No keratin. That's simply to protect. So the areas that you'd see that is where you're not trying to give off any kind of digestive enzymes or anything. So things like the esophagus, for example, mouth, for example, the pharynx. We'll see that the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Simple columnar epithelium, on the other hand, will help with secretion and absorption of materials. So we'll find that in areas like the stomach and the intestines. Now between the cells, we'll find tight junctions, and hopefully you guys remember what tight junctions were. So basically those held the cells together, those epithelial cells together, and prevented any fluids from leaking out between them. And you can imagine this will be very important, particularly when we're talking about things like stomach acids and digestive enzymes. Okay. The other thing too that's kind of neat about the epithelial cells of our digestive tract is that basically they are replaced every 5 to 7 days. So basically once a week you get new cells, not earlier than that. Okay. The lamina propria, and still in the mucosa layer, just underneath the lamina propria. That's also areolar connective tissue, and you'll see it has these. Let's see if I can get my mouse to move here. These mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue, or something called MALT. So this is diffuse lymphatic tissue. It'll have B cells, T cells, the lymphocytes in it, right? Kind of, again, trying to make sure that if you happen to ingest anything, it's not going to get into your system. And then I think the muscularis is fairly obvious. That's simply the part that's going to help contract, move food along. And then again, the submucosa, the serosa is simply the outer layer. Oh, and very quickly, this muscularis mucosae of the mucosa layer. Let's see, sorry, my cursor's not wanting to move. So this muscularis mucosa of the mucosal layer. So basically, this is a thin little layer of smooth muscle, and basically what this is doing is it will contract, and it makes sure, like by its contraction, it kind of moves those epithelial cells around, and this will be particularly important in areas like the intestines where you have absorption going on. And by moving the cells around a little bit, it helps increase the surface area, and it helps increase their contact with the food so they can actually absorb it. All right. So you also have something called the enteric nervous system, so the brain of the gut. It's actually pretty impressive. You have something like here's a nice textbook number. And let's see if I can get my cursor here so I can write for you. Right. So you actually have 100 million cells, neuronal cells or nerve cells in your digestive tract. 100 million. That's why they call it the brain of the gut. Okay. And that's throughout the digestive tract. That's all the way from the esophagus down to the anus. So you have the first group of neurons, so it's a plexus because they kind of come together. It's called the myenteric plexus. And basically, this is located between the longitudinal, you kind of see it's this longitudinal and circular muscle layers. And then the second one is the submucosal plexus. So right here, submucosal plexus. and this is found within, well, the submucosa. Okay, the myenteric plexus is mostly, well, it's in the muscle layer, so it's mostly controlling the GI tract motility. So it controls GI tract motility or movement of the GI tract. All right, so motor neurons of the myenteric plexus are going to help control that GI tract motility. Motor neurons of the submucosal plexus, on the other hand, are going to supply, so motor neurons of the submucosal plexus supply the secretory cells of the mucosal epithelium and basically by doing that they're going to help control the secretion from the organs of the GI tract. Okay, so again, motor neurons of the myenteric plexus, they cause movement, right? Helps move food along. Whereas the submucosal plexus, they're going to help supply the secretory cells, the ones that are giving off the digestive enzymes, and basically, tell them to, all right, now secrete your digestive juices. Okay, interneurons are just that. They're simply going to connect neurons of the myenteric and submucosal plexus. Well, plexuses, I guess plural. Okay, so the interneurons are just connecting these two plexuses together. So you're not just contracting, but you're also contracting and secreting, right? Kind of at the same time. And then we have basically two different types of sensory neurons. We have chemoreceptors. And hopefully you guys remember from 201, chemoreceptors are picking up on chemical cues. Okay, and then the other ones are mechanoreceptors. Oops, I can't write this low. Let's see. Mechanoreceptors. Okay, and these are going to be stretch receptors. Okay, so the mechanoreceptors are stretch receptors, meaning they're picking up on stretch of basically the mucosa and submucosa. Okay, so if, like, for example, you eat a whole bunch of food, your stomach fills with food, the stretch receptors say, all right, stop eating, you're full, right, for example. All right, hopefully you remember the difference between the sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous systems, right? Sympathetic is the fight or flight. Parasympathetic is your rest and digest. So in general, stimulation of the parasympathetic nerves will cause an increase in digestive juice secretions, as well as an increase in the movement of the stomach. And remember, if the parasympathetic nervous system is one that's active, you've got plenty of blood going to your intestines to help you digest your food. On the other hand, if the sympathetic nervous system is activated, because, I don't know, you're angry, you've got some sort of anxiety, you're scared about something or something makes you nervous, that sympathetic nervous system will be activated, and basically it'll cause secretions to decrease, as well as the movement of the intestines also is decreased. There's less movements, and also blood is going to be routed from the digestive area to muscles. And so all those things are going on. All right, so here's just another look at the parts of the digestive system, right? Kind of nice and ordered for you. Again, very good diagram. Does a nice job summarizing what we're going to be talking about. So let's just talk about the mouth real briefly. I think that's fairly easy. Right, obviously you have your lips. There's a superior and an inferior lip. Here's a nice view of the different teeth. You have your incisors, right? The two in the middle are the central incisors. Then you have lateral incisors. The next teeth lateral to that will be the cuspids or canines. Then we have premolars and then molars. Here's a nice view of that uvula, the hard palate, then the soft palate. The space in the back of your mouth, that's the fauces, you're seeing it here. You can see the palatine tonsil in the back as well. Let's see what else. So here's one of the salivary glands, well, the opening, I should say, of the submandibular salivary gland. And I think that's about it for you guys to know. We have 3 different salivary glands. So you have large parotid salivary glands, and you can see the duct that's going to take saliva to the mouth. You have sublingual salivary glands right underneath the tongue, and then you have the submandibular salivary gland right underneath the mandible. Now, all 3 of these will be made up of a combination of mucus as well as serous acini. So acini are simply like clusters of cells that are going to function together. Mucus acini produce, well, mucus, and that's easy enough. And then the serous acini are producing a lot of very liquidy saliva. It has a lot of something called salivary amylase in it. Let's see. So the serous acini are producing salivary amylase, and this will start to break down carbohydrates. Okay. They also are going to produce something called lingual lipase. And lingual lipase is another enzyme. So again, salivary amylase is an enzyme breaks down carbohydrates. Lingual lipase is also going to break down foods, but it's going to break down fats. Now, kind of an interesting thing about these two, and you should know, is that salivary amylase functions best around the pH of 7, roughly, give or take. And then lingual lipase works best around the pH of 2. So basically what this ends up meaning is that even though these two are both released into your mouth, salivary amylase will start working immediately because the pH in your mouth is around 7, right? It's not completely neutral, but it's fairly close. Lingual lipase will not work. It will not start breaking down fats until the food enters your stomach where you have an acidic pH of around 2. Okay. Now, these 3 salivary glands are also not created equal. The parotid has the most serous acini, and the sublingual is going to have the most mucus acini, with the submandibular being sort of the intermediate between the two. So basically what that means is the saliva produced by the parotid is very watery, again has lots of the salivary amylase, lingual lipase, and then the mucus being made by the sublingual is more thick, it's a little bit more viscous, and it contributes less to the salivary amylase and lingual lipase. I'm not going to ask you like any specific questions on differentiating between baby teeth versus adult teeth, like how many baby teeth do you have versus this, or anything like that. But oops, sorry about that. But it's just kind of a nice image showing you the differences between adult and baby teeth. You will need to know central incisor, lateral, cuspids, premolars, second premolar, molar, as far as adult teeth goes. Okay, so please make sure you learn those. And don't worry about numbering. Like, I'm not going to be like, tooth number 22 is... I will not do that. Nor will I ask you, like, how old are you when you get your first molar? Like, I won't ask you. But it's kind of a nice, handy reference guide. Let's take a quick view of our teeth. The main areas, the crown, so that's going to be the part that you brush. That's the part that you see. There's a little bit here that is going to dip underneath your gums or the gingiva. right before you actually get to the bony socket. That's called the neck. And then anything that's actually in the bony socket is considered the root. In the middle of your tooth, you have the pulp cavity. So it's basically a cavity, well, not like in the bad sense, but it's basically just a space where you have lots of blood vessels and nerves as well. Okay. Around the outside of the crown, you have enamel, hardest substance in your body. Underneath that, you have dentin. Holding the tooth in the socket are these periodontal ligaments, so you can kind of see them attaching that to the bone, and they call that bone the alveolar bone. Okay, and then also around the outside of the root of the tooth, you have something called cementum. It helps attach that periodontal ligament. And I think this is something else you need to know in lab, is the apical foramen. So you can remember apex is just where something comes to a tip, or kind of like a pointy end. So here, sort of by this tip here, there's a hole that's going to allow the blood vessels and the nerves into the tooth. And here's what I just told you. So enamel, again, hardest substance in the body. It's made up of calcium phosphate, well, I should say, and calcium carbonate. It's not one or the other. It's not like some people have one, some people have the other. So it's made up of calcium phosphate and calcium carbonate. The dentin is simply calcified connective tissue, kind of bone-like, I guess. And then the cementum is also very bone-like, and it helps anchor that periodontal ligament into the tooth. All right. Then we have our esophagus. So just very quickly here, we have, again, the same sort of layers: mucosa, submucosa, muscularis. And then in this case, we have something called adventitia, it's not serosa. Adventitia simply tends to be a little bit more loose than serosa. So mucosa in the esophagus is made up of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. The lamina propria is just alveolar connective tissue, and then that muscularis mucosa. Submucosa, and then again you have the circular and longitudinal muscle layers, and then the connective tissue. Okay. And then basically when you swallow, peristalsis, or sort of these wave-like contractions, are going to push food down, as you can see in this image. And then it kind of lets you know circular fibers are behind the bolus, so that you can see this, they contract, the longitudinal muscles contract, and food moves down. Okay? In rough time, it takes about 48 seconds for something solid to enter into your stomach, but liquids just kind of flow right down into your stomach. It's really important that that lower esophageal sphincter opens up so that food can go into the stomach. If it doesn't, it's kind of painful to have food just sitting there. I'll let you guys watch this. It's an X-ray video. I forget which one's which. One's an X-ray video of a sword swallower, kind of showing you like where a sword goes when they swallow it. And this guy Stevie Star, that made his sort of dubious fame, being able to swallow things and bring them back up. The Stevie Star video is highly entertaining. I would watch it if I were you. Okay, but I'll let you guys do that on your own free time. If that lower esophageal sphincter is not closing properly, that's when you have GERD, or gastroesophageal reflux syndrome. So again, you can see this, here it is nice and closed as the liquid in the stomach is churning. That's fine, it's not coming back up into the esophagus. However, when it doesn't close properly, acids come back up into the esophagus, and that's what happens with heartburn. Right, so I had mentioned this to you before. If the lower sphincter fails to open, it feels like a chest pain, sometimes a heart attack, because your heart is right here, sort of above the diaphragm. So if there's lots of food kind of just sitting here, it can't get into the stomach, it'll feel like a heart attack. And then, so I was just mentioning to you, the lower, if it fails to close, you can get the esophageal reflux disease. Okay. Some people just have a naturally weak sphincter for whatever reason. Doctors will tell them don't eat a large meal, because obviously hopefully it's obvious, the more you eat, the more the stomach has to churn. And so the greater the probability of something kind of blurping back up, I guess. And then they'll also tell you, cut out smoking, alcohol, because that'll also cause the sphincter to relax and make it worse. Okay. So these different things, like the way Tagamet or Pepsidase C works, is it decreases the amount of stomach acids that are secreted, so less stomach acids, less things that are going to kind of, blurt back up. Or you can always neutralize the acids with Tums. All right, that's plenty. So please let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you next video.